Welcome everyone to the House of Shadows and Ink. My very special guest today is author Tim Waggoner. Now, thank you, Tim, for being here. Um, Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And for those who don't know who Tim is, I'm going to give him the floor now, but absolute legend. Just some of these names are going to totally blow your mind, and we're going to dive into where it all started and how he does it. Uh, Tim, so what do you do?
I've been writing since I was 18. I'm almost 62, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
Write usually horror and media tie-ins. I've done about 60 novels, a number of short story collections. I've won 4 Bram Stoker Awards and 2 Scribe Awards for tie-ins. Also been teaching. I already said that. I think I've already said I've been teaching for a long time.
Sure. And you've been involved in some very popular franchises, intellectual properties. I mean, they actually contact you now and say, like, listen, we need a book. What are some of the biggest ones you've worked on?
Well, the Halloween Kills, I did the novelization of that. And a lot of people like that. But it's also just a huge property that's been around for so long. So that got a lot of attention. I've done the novelizations of Terrifier 1, 2 and Terrifier 3, the latter of which just came out a few days ago.
Mm,
And both of those have a huge fan base. Um, I did 3 original adventures and a couple other books dealing with Sam and Dean from Supernatural, and they have a huge fan base. I
cool.
got to do a Conan the Barbarian novel, which, he's a legendary character who's been around since like the
Mm.
1920s or 30s. And I'm working on another one now that I can't say what it is. Hopefully they'll announce it soon. But I'm
Mm,
very excited about
awesome.
it.
And your, like, I have to ask, your favorite one?
It's really hard to say. The experience with Halloween Kills was interesting because before they announced that there was a novelization, but before they could announce it was me, COVID hit and they moved the release of the film back by a year.
Mm.
And I was like, thank God they didn't say anything because all these fans would have been emailing me to ask me, what's going on in the movie? What happened? Tell me. And so nobody knew. And I got to watch for a year all
Oh.
across social media as people speculated what was going to be in the film. And I'm like, well, I know. So it was kind
And
of a fun experience to have that secret for a year.
mm, I remember we met in Order on Main earlier this year,
Mm.
and I remember someone asked you, because we were like tables directly next to
Right.
each other, and I was listening the whole time, and he asked about there's a certain scene that you couldn't get it from the movie into the book, so you had to not make up, well, you had to reinvent the situation and how to get it from like the movie to the book. Because I mean, it's not going to be 100% exactly the same. Can you recall what like really special scene there was that you had to basically reinvent?
No, I can't. But the basic thing does happen a lot because usually all you're ever given is a
Mm.
script. And you don't know if it's the final shooting script or not if you're doing a
Oh,
novelization.
that's true.
And yeah, so you do the best you can. And studios in general don't give you anything. So you end up hunting on the internet looking for like publicity photos or behind the scenes photos,
Sure.
maybe video that somebody snuck that they shouldn't have snuck, but at least now I can see a little bit. But that's changed a lot. The last few that I've done, studios they've worked really like the last. I also did the X trilogy for the Ty West thing, and it's like the attitude toward tie-ins, especially novelizations, is starting to change. The studios are eager to have them. They give you all kinds of
That's good.
material. If there's anything like visual that you can look at ahead of time, like a cut of the movie or whatever, they'll let you see that. And that's just completely 180 degrees around from the way that it used to be. Or maybe it's 360, whatever.
Oh.
It's a complete turnaround. I'm a word guy, not a
Mm.
number guy. So that's
Oh, so
that's
it'll be
changed a lot.
180 then, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, so
that's
that's
excellent.
really
I'm
yeah,
glad to
it's
hear that.
really amazing. Yeah.
So let's go way, way back when you said you started writing at 18. So,
If seriously, with the goal of making it my life's work, yeah.
hmm. So where did it begin? Like reading movies, what got you into like the whole creative journey?
I've always been was always a creative kid, so I tried everything. I was drawing, I'd make up stories. A lot of times they would be stories that I would sort of, act out with like, friends in a playground at school. I'd be like the director. I'd tell them what to do, which characters to play. Um, there's, a lot of reading of various kinds, a lot of horror comics early on,
Mm,
especially some that
nice.
were, not really appropriate for kids, but no, none of my family cared. They would just buy me whatever I wanted. Um, and then, in movies too. And then there got to be a point where I just didn't read as much. I don't know why. I just stopped around 12 or 13. And most of the time was spent watching television and movies. And then I started picking up comics. So I'd be reading Marvel comics and DC comics. And, there weren't that many
Mm,
independent comics back then, but still some. And I just read everything. And my love of reading picked back up from there. And I started reading novels again. And in high school, I usually read fantasy because, they just re-released Tolkien's books again. And Terry Brooks's books had come out. And Stephen R.
cool.
Donaldson's Covenant books. There was a whole explosion of fantasy at that time. But I was still reading Stephen King and reading other horror writers. Um, Still drawing. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be a musician. I played trumpet in the band. I was in the drama club. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be an actor. And I started college off as an acting major. And on the very first day, the professor said the only reason to do this is because you have to, because the odds of success are so great, the life is
Mm.
so hard that you need that kind of drive to survive it. And I was like, I don't feel that way about acting. I just like it. But I turned the question around and I asked myself, what's the one thing that I can't not do? And it turned out to be writing. And I was like, okay. So whatever else I did, I knew that that was going to be the major factor in my life.
I've seen that quite a lot lately. The fact that you can't go a day, like what aspect of your life can't you live without? And I mean, it's like yes, I'm more into like, the publishing and the marketing and like contract and business and that stuff, but I still see the creativity and I try and use it wherever I can. But I can't even go 10 minutes without thinking about like this business, this industry, books and authors and artists. That's why if I wake up at like 5 o'clock and my brain is like, "Ooh, this is a good idea," like it's over. I can't sleep. It's up. It's get to work kind of thing. And I actually feel for people who don't have that kind of like passion and love. But I think there is something for everyone, and it's just like a matter of finding it. And I'm so glad like so many artists have found that, you
Mhm.
especially. So, what was when you said like 18, you started taking it seriously? What was the first big project that you worked on? Published or unpublished, doesn't matter. What was the first big one?
Well, I started writing short stories. I didn't like reading short stories all that much back then, but I figured if I was going to be a fiction writer, I should try to like master as many tools as I could. So I wrote sort of
Mm,
a fantasy science fiction humorous story, and I sent it to Aswall's magazine. Back then, no internet to tell you how to submit things. Everything was just, you print
mm,
things out. Well, type it up. No printers yet, not for a couple more years, and mail it to them. And I didn't know you were supposed to put a self-addressed stamped envelope for them to return the manuscript. So what I got back was a postcard that just said, we're not taking your story, but if you want it back, send us an envelope. And I was so embarrassed I didn't do it. Um, but I framed that because it was my first time that I'd made the whole, like the connection all the way through. I'd submitted something,
mm,
somebody read it, and then I got a response. And I kept it up for a number of years. And then I started working on a fantasy novel. Um, Finished it, sometime that same year. My birthday's in March, so I shifted from like, 18 to 19 when I finished it. And it was weird because that was back in the day that anybody could send manuscripts to a publisher and they would read them and they would respond to you probably within a month, which which nobody can
wow.
imagine now. Yeah, you get a personal response and it was nice. But I wrote a number of novels before I had anything published. I'm one of those people. It's kind of like the Groundhog movie where I just have to do stuff over and over and over again until I finally get it right. I'm not good at going back and trying to find ways to fix it because you can't change the foundation it grew from in a lot of ways.
Mm.
So, but yeah, that's what I started working on.
Excellent. And the first publication?
The very first one that took place when I was 16, I was taking the only creative writing class in my high school. And I'd written a story. I'd actually taken an idea I had seen in one of the war on horror magazines. It was like creepy or eerie, I can't remember.
Mm.
And it was about a Christmas elf who was the last one. Santa's dead, all the other elves are dead. And he's just trying to keep it going. But it was mostly like a Tales from the Crypt kind of revenge thing, where the gift
Mm.
was that the elf killed these kids' abusive parent or something. And I'm like, well, there's some real potential for character growth or interesting theme in the idea of the Last Christmas elf. So I stole that idea, but I took it into a much different direction. And I wrote it for class, and the teacher liked it, and she actually read it out loud to the class, but anonymously. She didn't say who it was. She said you could tell if
Mm.
you wanted to, and I was too embarrassed. I didn't say anything. And I didn't know my high school had a writer of the month thing, but they made me writer of the month. And then a small newspaper decided they were going to print it, and they interviewed me. So it was my first interview, and I had no
Cool.
idea how to act. So I went over to the reporter's house, and I wore my suit that I yeah, because I didn't know you're supposed to dress up. Like how many times do you see writers in suits ever in your
Mm.
life? But I didn't know that. And so yeah, that was the very first one. After that, then it was a couple of stories in the college literary magazine. And then I started publishing, infrequently, but publishing like usually horror stories in small press magazines.
And when did the first opportunity for like a franchise intellectual property come along, like a movie tie-in?
Yeah, I think the very first one was, in the early days of uh, social media. It wasn't even called that back then, but there was a message board. General Electric, the company, did it. It was called Genie with capital GE for, General Electric. And if there were topics for like science fiction writers, horror writers, and there were public boards. But then once you had sold a couple stories, you had membership to the private board. Plus, then your genie fees were waived since you were considered like content that might bring people in, and that's where you'd see like
Cool.
anthology calls and things. And so somewhere along the lines during that time, I saw that the White Wolf, the game company, was doing an anthology for their vampire game Dark Ages. And I just submitted a story on spec and they published it. And then because of that, they asked me to do um, one of Dark Ages vampire book. They were doing like a series of 12 or 13. And so because for all the different vampire clans, they had one. And it was supposed to tell an overarching story that they had plotted out. And I forget which one they asked me to do, maybe number 10. And I was just like, this is awesome. I can't believe this.
Mm.
Uh, and I tried over the years to kind of get into Dungeons and Dragons and they have like an open sort of, at least they used to have an
Yes.
open submission thing and send stuff in, just writing samples and stuff, and they never got back to me. Eventually, I did connect with them, but it was that short story um, for White Wolf. It was my first tie-in. First novelization didn't happen until a number of years later. Um, I had published those supernatural books I mentioned. I had published those for
Mm.
Titan Books. And then Titan one day, one of my editors just asked if I wanted to do a novelization of Resident Evil, the final chapter. And I was like, yeah, I've seen all those movies. I'd love
Nice.
to do that.
Mm.
So that was the very first novelization I did.
So would you say as like an author, does it help that you also are you like a movie buff? Like do you dissect movies? Do you know movies? Or is it more of I'm the writer, I can create that world on paper?
Maybe a little of both, but it really helped. I am a fan of movies. I've been watching all kinds of movies, but especially horror, science fiction and fantasy since I was a kid. And so that helps a lot. And I do kind of think visually anyway when I write, since I know I'm writing for
Mm.
people who, even if they read a bunch, most of them have absorbed stories, who knows how many hundreds of times more through visual media. And that's just a language that they
Yep.
understand really well. So I think all that helps when you're doing a novelization, but I'm not,
Mm.
sometimes, most movie scripts, they will only make about a 40,000 word novel just from the material
Mm,
that's in them. And so to make an 80,000, 90,000, whatever word novel, you got to invent a lot of stuff. And so that's when they being able to work within the confines of that world and create stuff comes in handy.
true. And so, what would you say is your favorite? Like working on your own world and story, or a tie-in?
Yeah, they exercise very different muscles um, creatively. So I like both. I mean, if I had to pick one, it's always going to be my own work. Um,
Mm,
even if it be somebody would say, okay, you can never do your own work again, but you can make X amount of dollars just doing tie-ins, I'd probably have to say no. But I also would, I'd be sad if they went away and I wasn't doing any now. But yeah, I would have to pick
mm,
my own work. But it's really interesting because I'd never written a sword and sorcery story, and they when I got the chance to do the Conan book, I was like, okay, I like Conan, and I wasn't a huge fan, so I had to do a deep dive into all of Robert E. Howard's work, and just that learning
nice.
experience was wonderful. So you get these experiences you didn't expect in a lot of ways, and
Mm.
that's a lot of fun. And it's also weird when
Yes.
you get to do tie-ins that are about stuff like properties you knew from when you were a kid. Like when I
Mm,
got to write Michael Myers, years ago, I did a Freddy Krueger book, an original adventure of Freddy Krueger. Got to do an Alien book, and these were all things that
cool.
they all came around when I was like in my 20s, but except for Halloween. Halloween came out in my 16, 17 maybe. But it's really weird. I think back sometimes. I remember sitting on the porch my family's house reading a newspaper, reading the critic's review of Alien, and I hadn't seen the movie because it was released, I think, unrated, maybe or with an X rating at first. I don't know, but it wasn't playing in a lot of places, so I didn't go see it till
Mm.
later. But I think, okay, kid, you don't know this, but in about 30 years, you're going to end up writing a novel about this monster. So I think back sometimes to that, and that's really cool to kind of get connected to
Mm.
those sort of things um, that are from my past.
Mm. I'm a firm believer that like everything you took in creatively, like even that period where you stopped reading and watched movies, it's like you were preparing yourself for the inevitable that you're gonna need those skills kind of thing. Um, and it's awesome to hear the story and like how everything came together. Um, with like there's so many amazing intellectual properties and franchises and stuff out there. It's like, is there something that you would really like to work on? Or I'm sure there will be a new one coming.
Well, I would
Well, you
really
said
like to
there's
work
some,
on.
but
I'm a big Star Trek fan, always have been. I'd love to do a Star Trek book.
nice.
I've come close once or twice, but it just didn't work out. So maybe
Mm.
someday. But at this point, it's like I'm known for doing horror more, and I don't really know that it'd be a sort of a Star Trek type name. People would be like, "What the hell is this guy doing writing Star Trek?" But that would be a lot of fun. Um, I'd be happy to do more Conan stories. I got to do a Conan short story for Titan 2. They do
Mm.
ebook only. Short stories of Howard's characters. So that was fun. Wouldn't mind doing that again. Um, I like Star Wars. Well, I've never been a gigantic Star Wars fan, so I would be happy to do one, but I don't have like a driving desire. Love to write about
Mm.
the universal monsters that I grew up with. The old-fashioned Dracula and
Nice.
Frankenstein, the Wolfman. I think that would be really cool. I would love to do that.
And I agree with what you said about writing something that you're not that familiar with, that's going to test you and it's going to like give you new skills. You have to go and do research, read up a lot. I believe authors need to like write something that's going to challenge you, like not something you've already done. Like it's not a repeat kind of thing. So now I've lost track. There was something I wanted to follow up on. Let me just mark the time so we can cut this bit. um, yes, sorry. So deadlines. Like, I bet there are some pretty harsh deadlines sometimes. What is your writing process like for tie-in compared to your own work, or do you just have like a set daily ritual schedule?
Well, when it comes to like an original tie-in, like if I'm creating a story but in the Alien franchise world,
Mm.
that's just like writing my own book, original stuff. If it's a novelization, I have the script and I have maybe, if I'm lucky, like the last few years, I've got the actual film or the actual TV series or whatever to watch. And that helps a lot. So when I have all that already created, novelizations can go a lot faster. Um,
Mm.
I don't really have an exact set process because I'm a college professor and once my schedule changes every semester, but once I know it, I can fit in my
Oh, okay.
writing around those times. I try to get up early or especially when a project is getting closer to a deadline. I may also write later like after my wife goes to bed. She says that I start slow and then I become like, it's like a roller coaster. The going up the hill is slow, but when I get about two-thirds of the way through a book or whatever, I just finish it up after that. For
Nice.
novelizations, the first thing I do is I type up all the dialogue in a script because I know I have to keep it. And then what I do is I fill in around it. And I don't even have chapter breaks till later when it comes to something like that because I'm not sure how long a given scene is going to
Yes.
be. Um, so that process is a little bit different. And if I have the visual, like when I wrote the novelization of Terrifier 2, I'd seen the movie in the theater and it was already out on streaming. So I literally could watch a scene and then I'd pull up the script and I'd pull up the dialogue manuscript I had and I could use the script and I could
Mm.
use the screen. I'm pointing to my TV. That's what I'm doing now. My TV's over there and I could just go ahead and fill it on in from that. So that adds an extra
Mm.
dimension to it, which is it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of weird. And when the script and the film don't match necessarily, something's different. I just flip a coin and pick the part I like best, or merge them together in different ways. And
And when
sometimes
you
the
get
creators
you,
are more involved than others too. The last
yes,
couple
that's
ones
what I want
I've
to ask
done,
now. Like,
yeah, used to be
yeah.
nobody cared, nobody paid any attention. And then when I did the novelization of Kingsman: The Golden Circle, the director actually flew me into Hollywood to watch a cut of the movie, and that was the first time I
Nice.
had like a creator interested because he's also the writer of the films, and that was it though. He didn't care what I did with it because it was weird. I'd seen by accident two different scripts. My editor and I had different scripts and didn't know it till I turned in a draft.
Okay.
And she was like, "What the hell is this?" And then I saw the movie. And so I just made the book out of my favorite parts of all three of those things. And nobody cared. Um, but then once I did the books for A24, the X trilogy, Ty West was very involved. He's like, "Nope, don't add anything." And he wanted to look at everything. So books came out short because of that,
Mm.
but nobody cared. And the thing I'm doing now, the creator of it's very involved. He's a fan of novelizations, very open, making sure I have access to all kinds of stuff, but I could talk to him anytime about it. And so that's an extra level. Excuse me. It's an extra level of
I think that's
intimidation
good.
in a way. Yeah, but you're also like, oh, I don't want to disappoint the creative person. And then the
True.
more people you have looking over your shoulder, the longer the process is.
Mm.
Because when I did the Resident Evil, the final chapter, I think there was the sixth movie in the series, the sixth one, and the fifth one ended on a cliffhanger that the sixth one does not pick up on. So I wrote a 60-page mini book in between just to go ahead and I just did it. I didn't ask permission. Nobody cared. But that's the sort of thing that, I don't know if I could get away with these days if somebody's really involved in
Mm.
it. Um, so we'll see. We'll see. But, if
I,
that
I
keeps
just
up, I don't know.
always I just always see the opportunity of like meeting new people, getting contacts, networking, that kind of stuff. Next time that guy makes a movie, he's like, no, Tim's my guy, no one else. He's
Right.
the only one. Uh, Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Thanks.
Um, so how do you approach your work? Do you see it as work? This is my job, professional, I'm going to go and work now? Or do you kind of still feel like you need to inspire yourself and like get yourself going? Or is it just like work, sit down, work?
It's a combination of both. It's kind of like they're intertwined. Um, if I don't feel inspired, I still sit down. and work.
Mm,
But a lot of times it helps. But I do, like you were talking about how you can't go 5 minutes without thinking about your company and thinking about any kind of creative thing and the writers and the artists.
mm,
I can't go 5 minutes without thinking about all kinds of stuff that could make stories, but really focusing on the one I'm working on. And so in my mind, I'm like visualizing and discarding scenes or recreating scenes. I'm thinking of dialogue. I'm imagining being the characters and what would they think or feel at this point. And that
mm.
helps me write faster once I get to, sit down to the page because I've worked through bits and pieces of drafts in my head. And so by doing that, I'm always kind of inspired, I guess. And then when I sit down to work, I can tap into that sort of like pre-work I've done inside my head.
Nice. I think the nice thing with novelizations and tie-ins is, I mean, you can go and watch the movie. You can, I mean, they might already be books. You can listen to the soundtrack of the movie and like you're in it.
Mhm.
You can play the music while you're writing. I think it's very exciting. And talking about movies, like let's say now Supernatural, if
Mhm.
it was still running. Any interest in like moving over to like actual screenwriting and maybe writing an episode of a show?
Probably not. The only two scripts that I've done because like I said, I started as a theater major, so I was interested in scripts, and I did a couple back then. Not much happened with them. Um, I did one that it was to an audio play that was produced online, which was cool. Just a little 5-10 minute play. And then I've got to do a couple comic scripts for comic strip stories, not comic strip, comic book stories. And I like those real well. Um, I don't know. I think to myself, by the time I'm done with what I'm doing now, I'll have done 10 novelizations. So I've worked with 10 scripts to turn them into stories. You'd think that maybe I'd pick something up in terms of being able to write a
Mm,
script. And sometimes I think about it just to challenge myself or stretch myself. Um, I don't know. It just doesn't feel as satisfying as because part of what I really love is to get into the characters' heads when I write. Even in an action adventure story, I love to do that. And it's not the perspective of a script is of an audience member watching, like an invisible
mm,
observer watching what's going on. You have to think about what's going on inside somebody's head to write the dialogue and what they're going to do. But still, you can switch from in the middle of a scene, you could switch to someplace else in the house where the killer is creeping up and your main character, who was just focused on a minute ago, he or she doesn't have any idea there's a monster in there. And so it's a different process in terms of how to view it. When I was one of the times I was a mentor for the Horror Writers Associations, one of my mentees he was an award-winning playwright who wanted to write fiction, and I had to really come up with a way to explain to him how the perspective you have to think from when you write fiction versus the perspective you think from when you write a play. And he seemed to think that was pretty
mm.
valuable. So I was glad for that.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I would actually really love to see some of your work in comic books. Like, I think that would be very interesting. And I think a lot of your fans, and you're quite the popular guy. I mean, I saw at the convention there were lots of movie lovers, and yes, they came to your table for the novelizations, but they were I think they came for that, but they like fell in love with your writing and they trust whatever you write. So that then they end up buying your books as well, like your own fiction. Um, and I think with that kind of fan base, I mean, movie lovers, book readers, comic book lovers, there's a lot of over what's the word, cross section,
Mhm.
and lots of interest from all of them for that stuff. So who knows? Maybe we should get that going. I'd love to see it, especially because I'm a big fan of like if there's an amazing story, it should be a book and a movie and a comic book and a audiobook and a graphic novel and whatever. Like not just one format. I mean, board games, computer games, you name it.
Mhm. It's like looking at different facets of a diamond or something. That
Hmm.
it's one thing, but you get different views of it in different ways.
As I love to collect, not that I can afford like I mean, you get some really serious collectors out there. But if I could, for instance, for Night of the Living Dead, if I could have like the original screenplay and the movie and a comic book and this and a that and a that and the, Daniel Krauss is he's writing a well he finished a book about Night of the Living Dead, um, and I'm getting an advance copy
Oh,
this
cool.
weekend, because I'm interviewing him later this month, and I can't wait because it's all about like how the movie influenced him and like general culture and horror over the years. And I mean, I was obsessed with that movie when I was young. So it just shows you what I mean, whether it's a book or a movie, how these things can actually change our lives. And for you, then years later to go and actually work on them, I'm the same. Like if I can get my hands on some of the things that, even just some of the authors, working with authors today that I read when I was young. I told Jonathan Maybury once I read one of his martial arts nonfiction books when I was a teenager. Like I had no idea I was gonna like meet this guy one day, and
Mhm.
like he's a horror writer. I just thought, man, this guy is cool. He was in our library by the martial arts section, so very
That's
nice.
awesome.
So,
Yeah, it's pretty
other
amazing
than the,
to meet people like that.
mm,
You know, people that you've read when you were a kid. I got to so many people I've got to meet and talk to, and it's just that's a huge part. And it doesn't they don't even have to be people you've read. It's just so many, especially in the horror community. There's so many wonderful people,
oh,
and
amazing people.
yeah, and it's just it that sense of family that's in there is that's
Mm.
a huge thing.
And you're quite active in the like convention circuit kind of thing. I mean, you go out there and you sell your books in person.
Yeah, I have. I don't know. I think I'm going to cut back on that just a bit, maybe. I did a lot last year. But yeah, it's nice to go meet people. It's an excuse to go someplace you haven't been before, which is nice. Um, but mostly, and it's nice to meet readers, but you also don't know who else is there. I mean, because of Horror on Main, I got
Mm,
to go ahead, meet you in person for the first time. We got to, be
mm,
next to each other at the
same.
convention. So those are the kind of things that are really wonderful about it because there are people that
Mm.
just you may not see them any other time. People from like I don't know how many people at the moment would want to come to America, but a lot of people from other countries would come to like World Fantasy or to the Stoker Con,
Mm,
and you would never get a chance to see them otherwise, maybe. So I think that there's a
true.
lot to be said from conventions. Plus, I'm a teacher, so I like sharing what I know, and I like helping other writers. So it's a great place
Yeah.
to do that too.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Since I was young, I knew I was good at teaching. I could teach people to do stuff and they become better than me. Whether it was martial arts was one of them, chess. Like I just break everything down into teachable little things. And eventually I did become a teacher, but it almost killed me. Not the teaching, the kids, the lack of
Hmm.
discipline, the sheer number of kids that went from like 31 in one my first year to 44 per class in my last year. Same space, just more kids. But yeah, so it's like, and to really master something, to know something, you have to teach it. For me
Yep.
to remember something, I have to put it in my own words, teach it, and then I'll remember it as well. Otherwise, it's in the one ear, out the other one. Um, how far, like where the Midwest? How far away are you from the Midwest? Whichever part of
Well,
America that might be.
yeah, I guess the where I live, I guess Ohio is counted kind of as the Midwest. It's weird because people farther west think we're the East, and people far, in the East, they think we're definitely Midwest. So,
Hmm.
but we're in the North, we're not in the South, so that part that part's pretty
Okay.
much
No,
settled. But it feels like
so I'm
Midwest. I
I'm
would count it as the Midwest.
I'm working with a few authors over there on maybe doing the very first Crystal Lake writers retreat at like an actual cabin lodge kind of camp setup. So Camp Crystal Lake, um, for like a writers retreat for like 3 or 4 days kind of thing. And I'd rather go to America once every year for something like that and actually meet authors and everyone teaches a bit kind of thing. And you take so much more in during that time than going to just convention. But I mean, there's a benefit to both of them. But I'm definitely planning that for next year. So I'll keep you in the loop. We're going to
Yeah,
need
please
some
do.
teachers there if it's not
Yeah,
too far away from you.
yeah,
They sent me a bunch of stuff. I'll just have to double check the names, and we're still working out like the cost. And just for me to
sure.
get there is
Mm,
already quite expensive. But I think it'll be worth it. So yes, anyway, let's see. For your personal fiction, um, what's next?
I don't know. Just today, my latest original novel has come out. It's called Face of Pain, and I posted about it everywhere on social media on my website. After that, I mean, right now I've got a big time project I'm
Let's
doing
see.
that should be done by about February, and then I have sort of a memoir of my life in horror that I've got to write for a publisher,
Yes.
and yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then after that, I have nothing. So we'll see. You know,
Oh,
my
they
agent's got a number of proposals out and other things. We'll see what happens.
in 3 or 4 months, I'm sure you're gonna have something. Okay, so you have a brand new book out. I'm gonna like we post news every Friday here on the House of Shadows and Ink, like new releases, whatever. It doesn't matter if it's self-published or who the publisher is. If it's something our fans would be interested in, we promote it. So I'll definitely go find the information and put it in next Friday's the Shadow Report, we call it. So
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
that's excellent. No, I'm a big fan. I recently got onto Audible. My eyesight is not so great anymore, and I can't find my Kindle. So I thought, well, why not Audible? So, and I
Hmm.
already marked some of your books on there, especially the Halloween one, Halloween Kills. Yes,
Hmm.
that was the first one I put on because I keep hearing amazing stuff, and I mean, um, I've been always been a fan of your like short stories to novellas. I don't think I've read anything of yours over like 40,000 yet. So I'm actually very interested to get into it. I've read your nonfiction, of course. That's amazing. Um, I just can't, the maybe I should attend one of your classes at some point as well. I'm always a fan of learning, like whatever I can
Yeah,
learn. It's
yeah,
it's
same.
it's a great feeling to still want to learn something. I can't imagine a world where you just accept. And I think with how the world is going to change in the next 2 years to 20 years with AI and stuff, people who can't live with change or adapt, I think they're really going to struggle because things are going to come at us really fast. Um,
Hmm.
but I think, like especially from me, from like a publisher's perspective, I always try and stay ahead of everything and stay up to date because we have to. Um, and hopefully keep that headache away from the authors and just have them focus on the story and creativity.
Hmm.
Fingers crossed, at least.
Right.
So, any advice for whether it's a young author struggling? I mean, imposter syndrome, it's a topic that comes my way a lot these days from authors. Have you ever struggled with that, especially when you're working with like these Hollywood people and directors and stuff? But I mean, you've been doing this so long now. Like, I think the problem might be for someone in their 40s, 50s doing their first novelization. I mean, that might be a bit of an issue, but have you ever struggled with kind of imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah, sure. And I'm not really sure how I deal with it. I know that it's almost like I take the imposter syndrome feelings and I put it on a shelf and leave it over here. And tell myself, what I have to write is, just I forget what it was I once saw. It might have been Bull Durham, but it was a movie where, an older athlete was coaching a younger one. And when he finally got, famous, he said, "This is what you say, like when you're in interviews. You say, I just got to go out there and play my game my way. Just tell him that." And then he
Mm.
sees him on TV toward the end of the movie doing that. And, that's what I say, because it's like, I know that, but when I did my Conan the Barbarian book, came out a couple months ago, I knew that just from looking at reviews of other Conan books and message boards. I knew that a lot of fans, if Robert E. Howard didn't write it, it's no good, no matter what.
Mm.
And so I knew that. And it's like, okay, that's all right. I just have to write my book to the very best I can. It's my version of Conan, and hopefully it'll find readers. Um, And I think that, like, with a fandom like Star Wars, that would be very intimidating too.
Mm,
So I don't
mm,
know, but I tell myself that those voices lie whenever I hear them because
mm,
I know they do. I mean, you may feel like you're an imposter, but your stuff wouldn't get published if you were. It's that's like I try to look at the actual what has happened in reality as opposed to, what are my fears or what are my worries. And,
mm,
and so it does help if you've been doing something for a long time, you're like, okay, I can probably do this. I've learned to do a lot of things. I still feel kind of that way. I've only done a couple comic book scripts or comic story scripts. I still feel a little that way when I do them, but it's the same thing. It's like, okay, no, you're just writing something and you can learn to do this. You've learned to do plenty and just not allow, the voice that says, you're not going to ever be as good as XYZ. You got to try not to compare yourself to people because if you compare yourself,
mm,
you'll always be lacking because you can never be anything but yourself, no matter what you do. Um,
mm.
that's the kind of thing for the world to decide. A writer named Lawrence Conley once told me that he said the world will decide how you'll be remembered, and so don't worry about it. And
It's
that
out
helped
of
a
your
lot.
hands.
Yeah, and
Mm,
and I've got to see that too as writers that I've known, or at least famous ones I've kind of known. They passed away, and I get to see, okay, it'll be a few more years probably till people may start re-exploring their work and stuff. But I got to see kind of, all right, here's how the world's remembering them, and I can just even you can look back and say, oh yeah, Shirley Jackson, The Lottery, The Haunting, The Hill House, but she did a lot of other stuff too. But I also read
mm,
an article once that said you had to create a lot of things for like to have like one thing be something that is like either very popular or very well known or remembered. And so I think of that too. And I think, okay, that's all right. I still wrote all those things. I still love them. It's like if a story of mine comes out and it feels like nobody read it, it's like I still learned from writing that story and I still enjoyed it.
mm. Oh, that's good. And it's good that I mean you could do this full time, but I mean you teach as well, so it is actually full time because all of this is you. This is you creating. This is you
Right.
teaching. This is you learning from the process and like handing it over to the new next generation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're always going to remember it. I remember when I first met you online, it was because I was chatting with someone or like a bunch of people. We were talking about movies or novelizations or something, and someone actually said to me, like, you do realize, like, Tim Waggoner's in the thread as well. Like, he wrote this and this and this. I'm like, whoa, this is like, and I mean, I was like still a young person in the industry kind of thing back then. So like that was very impressive. Like, and I'm like, what's this guy doing on Facebook? Like, how cool is this? I mean, that was just the beginning of where you could actually chat with authors online. I
Right.
think this was like 2013. No, it was even before that. But yes, so um, amazing that we live in an age now where we can do that, and the authors actually want to like teach us as well. And over advice, and be it imposter syndrome and all that stuff. Um, but Tim, thank you so much. This has been really insightful, and like I always enjoy chatting with you. Um, just hearing what you're busy with and the whole process of it all. Anything else you want to put some attention on? Any projects? Anything? We will definitely share whatever links you can send us, social media, all that stuff. If people want to follow you online, we'll put it in the description and links to your
Okay.
books, etc.
I guess the only other thing that I've had come out recently is the novelization of Terrifier 3 came out. Um,
Mm.
and so that just like last week, uh, paperback still has to come out, but that's Tuesday. So basically, it's all going to be out. Um,
Okay.
the last bit of advice I just told we're at the end of the semester at my school. So I just told my creative writing classes yesterday for our last class. When I was 19, it was my freshman writing class. And at the end of it, the instructor had conferences with us, and she said, I urge you to take your writing as far as you can. And I realized that that's the perfect writing advice because there's no end to it. There's no particular place
Mm.
to end. She didn't say publish 10 books. She didn't say make $1 million. She didn't say have any of your books made into movies. It was just take it as far as you could. And so I've been passing that on for the last 40 years or whatever. Pretty, yeah, about 40 years, as much as I can, because it's like, I think it's a good thing to focus on as opposed to, oh, I've got to have a novel done by age 30. And if I don't have it out there and it's not a hit, I'm a failure. It's too easy to do
Mm.
that to yourself.
No, it is. It's definitely not healthy at all. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. This is really amazing. And we're always here if you ever like have a new project next year or the year after, and you wanna, even if you just send us a short video or just an update, we'll post it because I'm sure everyone will want to know. Otherwise, we'll set up another interview and just do it all over again.
That would be wonderful. I
Can't
really had a great
wait.
time talking with you, Joe.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks everyone for watching. If you have any questions, just put it in the comment section and I'll make sure Tim sees it and we'll get back to you. Thanks everyone. Bye, Tim.
Bye.